Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while. The seasons have changed. The weather's getting colder. It's a windy night across the mid Atlantic when we're recording. And I'm here with Palmer Johnson. This is the Onward to Victory podcast, your only podcast that covers George Mason basketball. Palmer, the season, if you can believe it, is only 3 days away when we're recording this. It's Friday. We're going to try and get this out on, I believe, tomorrow. Tomorrow, I believe, is the goal. That would be Saturday. It would be 2 days before. But it's 6 o'clock, Friday night, Halloween night, the 31st. We are right there. We're right there. We're about 72 hours away from the start of the season. Palmer, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to delve into regarding this team, how it looks like, the guards, the forwards, the big men, what our expectations are. But let's kick it off first from our last episode. We've got a recruiting update, Palmer. The 2026 class, we've got another signee, Palmer. Who do we got becoming a Patriot next season?
Peyton Miller, a 6'3" point guard out of New Jersey. Pretty good pickup. It wasn't as hyped up as the Pendergrass pickup because that was a guy they've been on for years. But Miller is a really, really high floor pickup.
And when you're talking about high floor, describe what you've seen. And, I think we both obviously had our little scouting reports. I'll talk about what I see, but talk about what you saw while scouting, what we've seen as we remember. The basketball season itself for high schoolers has also started to kick in more in the past months.
I didn't see him as too strong of a scorer, but I saw him as a great point guard, pure point guard. And that's just the type of guy that at the very worst, he's your backup point guard for 4 years and you're very happy with it.
Yeah, I think we made some comparisons. There was a little bit of Baraka there, I think, in some of the videos that we've shown. He's a quick guard. He maybe doesn't have that same elite first step I think that Baraka did. Obviously, that is something that not many freshmen are going to be able to repeat. But he's a quick guard. He likes to get to the basket compared to Baraka. He does seem to have a three-point shot, which is very important, obviously. He's got that three-point shot. That's critical. That's something that Tony Skinn, I think, wants to see more out of his guard as he continues to build up this roster, is that ability to hit three-point shots and hit them consistently. But this is a guy who I think has a high ceiling. The floor, I don't think the floor is as high as I think Shane Pendergrass's is, who I think has a very high floor, but I think Peyton Miller certainly has a very high ceiling and is someone that Patriots fans should be excited about. And Palmer, I think you could go into this here, but this is a guy who should be working very, very hard in his lead-up season becoming a Patriot.
Yeah, I wasn't too high on the Miller signing when it happened, but then I saw the Overtime Elite tweet where he was their leader in field goal attempts, practice field goal attempts, and it was by 3,000. It was something crazy. Like he was at 9,000, the next closest guy was at 3,000, something insane like that, or 6,000, something insane like that. So you're just gonna get a hard worker, which is, that's just like I said, high floor. That's keeping that floor, keeping that floor high of. Well, at the very least, he's not going to be, not living up to whatever his potential could be. He's going to, work as hard as he can to get there.
Yeah, he's going to be a hard worker. He's going to be a talented player, and we're excited that he's a Patriot. But Palmer, that is the future. That is part of what will come later. But right now, like I said, we're in the now, Palmer. We're 3 days out from George Mason basketball. It's high about time we talked about this team. We've got 13 talented players here, all on the roster. It's ready to go. There's a couple of walk-ons as well, but this is a roster that's ready to go. And obviously, it's a reloaded roster. That is the storyline to start the season. Only 2 returning players from last season. In senior guard, Brayden O'Connor, and international forward Stas Sivka coming in for his sophomore year. Those are the only 2 returners. Now, it was not necessarily a full portal exodus for the Patriots like it was after Kim English left for Providence after the 2022-23 season. it was not totally a portal exodus. Certainly we had players leaving the portal. Jalen Haynes left for Cincinnati, both freshmen in Bryson Coakley and Justin Begg left for other opportunities. But and Austin Ball, after taking a redshirt year, he also left in the portal. However, this was mostly a graduation thing, Palmer. That seems to be what makes this I think, very different change for, I think, most teams in the Atlantic 10 this year who had high turnover numbers. A lot of those other teams' turnover came from people leaving in the portal. Some of that was because some of these teams fired their coaches. Or coaches are tired. You look at teams like LaSalle and Fordham who have new coaches this year. Fordham, a lot of that transfer portal activity was because Keith Ergo got fired. But it will be a thing for the Patriots. Like I said, it's a lot of graduations. KD Johnson graduation. Darius Maddox graduated. What else we've got? Woody Newton graduated. Jared Billups, a huge one, a massive one, graduated. There's a lot of these kind of top, guys you're talking about who were in the top 8 of the rotation. Outside of Haynes and Emejiro, the vast majority of those players graduated. They ended their college careers. So do you think what type of difference do you think does that make, Palmer? Does that, maybe help with the transition a little bit? The fact is that we knew that we were going to lose the vast majority of these guys everywhere. So many, maybe the coaches have been planning for this. They recognize that we were losing these players. Do you think this will help Mason, or do you think it doesn't matter which is which? You're still losing guys, whether you lose them to the portal or to graduation. Or, you think because we're losing them the normal way, do you think the coaching staff was more prepared and maybe had the ability to build off of those losses maybe a little bit better than just random portal coming and goings?
I think 2 years ago I would have said that losing them from graduation is better because you are planning to lose them.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like you're kind of planning to lose everybody unless proven otherwise. So it kind of doesn't matter as much. I mean, I guess you're gonna know for sure instead of knowing we have to re-recruit this guy, we'll just know that guy's gone for sure. So you're just thinking about it the entire season.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a very big deal. Obviously, here for this group and for this team, there's a lot of new faces. But let's start. We're going to start with the guards here, and then kind of make our way down the roster, guards to forwards to the big men. But let's start with the one returner at guard, Palmer. There's nothing, you can't start this team without talking about Brayden O'Connor, and also talking about the fact that I think, even as a surprise to us, I think we're both very high on Brayden as a player and are high on him coming into the season. He is a first-team All-A-10 preseason pick. That comes with expectations, obviously, but, let's go into it. Palmer, what are your expectations for Brayden O'Connor this year?
I would expect an uptick in volume and efficiency from his scoring, and an uptick in efficiency on his playmaking, but a decrease in volume there. I don't think that I think he'll be asked to play some point guard, but will not be the primary guy like he was last year.
Yeah, that's obviously going to be a big deal. Look, I think Brayden did a good job in a situation that he was put in. Obviously, I think really the one knock on last year's Mason team was the fact that team did not have a true point guard. Brayden O'Connor, I mean, it was much of the story that O'Connor had not played point guard before. KD Johnson had not played point guard since, I believe, his junior year of high school before he came to George Mason. He had actually played more of the two-guard role at Auburn and Georgia. So, outside of Justin Begg, who sometimes played very sparingly, especially when it came to conference play, Mason did not have someone who was used to playing point guard. Now, Brayden did a good job in tight circumstances. However, I think even he would admit, and I think Coach Tony Skinn will admit this too, that he is probably more efficient coming out of an off-the-ball role. And I think that's where you're seeing some of the excitement from the coaches that are coming from O'Connor. He has a good first step. He is very good when he gets to the basket. He is actually an incredibly efficient player when he gets close to the basket. And he is certainly not a bad mid-range shooter, and he's not a bad three-point shooter. So, Palmer, I mean, if we're talking about O'Connor at the 2 instead of O'Connor at the 1, do you think, the new expectations that it seems coaches and media from around the league have for him, do you think that then tracks? Because we've seen the guy offensively be able to play well in off-the-ball situations, and when he's able to drive to basket, if he's not, kind of being forced into controlling the offense from the point guard role, how much do you think that then helps his offensive game, that he can really focus on being off the ball and making those driving runs to the hoop, which, like I said, he's very efficient at?
I think it'll help him a lot because when I watched him at UMass Lowell, he was an awesome off-ball player. And of course, it's not Winnie Skinn's fault that he couldn't use him in maybe what the best way was, because the best way for Brayden O'Connor was not the best way for the team. Because
Yes.
you're missing out. The team was missing out. So I think that's going to help him a lot. Clearly, the A10 thinks so as well. It sounds like if you pick him as your A10 first team guy, they think he's going to be the number one option. And there's definitely a world where that happens.
Absolutely. But the roster is calling him a guard, so we're gonna call him a guard. Maybe this is better described as guard/wings for this spot. But let's talk about the senior from Frederick, Maryland, who's taking over the number 0. This is a guy who I think maybe out of all the transfers throughout the practices, throughout some of the scrimmages and the preseason game, this seems to be the guy who's gotten the most hype, I think, from the fan base. Let's talk about Masai Troutman, the transfer from Northeastern. This is a really, really talented young man who, it's weird saying young man. I think he's only a year younger than me. I know maybe that doesn't track that well. Maybe I shouldn't say young man, but he's a very, very good player who had a season that was cut short by injury last year for Northeastern. I think he only got in 13 games. But this is the guy who I think, if you look at the clips here, Palmer, and you see what people have been talking about through the scrimmages and the open practices and the preseason game against Alfred, this seems to be the guy who is as close, if not better than Brayden, at being that 3-level scorer.
Yeah, I have not been able to go to any practice. I missed the exhibition game, so I've been able to see it firsthand. But people are really raving about his ability to get open and make shots, which is, that's kind of the two things that you want from your guy you're looking to score from. I personally thought he was going to be kind of that role, but off the bench, because that's kind of a common role. This guy can score really well. He's going to be our sixth man. Whenever our number one option goes out, he comes in their place. But it seems like he might be that number one option instead of replacing him.
Yeah, he certainly seems to be the one, at the very least at the moment, who seems most likely to take Darius Maddox's spot there at the 3. And it's not like, Masai Troutman he's a 6'5", but he's a solid 6'5". He's a big-bodied 6'5", lanky, good wingspan. This is going to be potentially a very tall roster. Well, I'm sure we'll talk more into that as we get further into the group. But certainly in terms of length and size, this is arguably Tony Skinn's biggest group so far, and I think the fact that you've got Masai Troutman as a 2-3 at 6'5" is very telling, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's 6'5" at the 3 is pretty good at the A10 level. Yeah, you can definitely get by with that, especially if you have some sides of the 1 and 2. I think Troutman's kind of comparison right now, I'm thinking of it, is like the idea of what you want Maximus Edwards to be. Not what he turns out to be. Not what he turns out to be, but like the idea of like, oh, this is what this guy could be.
Yes. The hypothetical of Maximus Edwards, not what he actually is. When he turns into minimum Edwards. Oh. We don't like when he turns into minimum. Well, we like it if he turns into minimum Edwards when he plays against Mason. Yeah. If he even sees the court at all this season due to some off-court issues that we will not delve into at this time. But we'll move on to the next one. It's a graduate senior. Now, this is a man who Tony Skinn has a great relationship. He's coached him in 2 places. And this is a guy who I think has been rumored to come to George Mason for a long time. Maybe the surprise starter, I think, from the preseason game against Alfred. It's Jahari Long, who came over as a transfer from Maryland. He played for Tony Skinn not only at Seton Hall, but also at Maryland, where Skinn was an assistant at both schools. Is he going to be the surprise of the year? Because are we going to see a 6'5" point guard for George Mason through Jahari Long, Palmer?
I feel like it's a surprise only because not because we didn't think Jahari Long was good, but because we thought Kory Mincy was such a good option there. Because you think about it, he played 40% of minutes on a good Maryland team. It's
Yes.
kind of like, well, if he's moving from the Big Ten to the A10, well, he's not gonna. You'd think the minutes would increase a little bit. So, I mean, it makes sense in that sense. It makes a lot of sense that this guy's gonna be the starting point guard. And of course, I didn't view him as a point guard when he was playing at Maryland. 15% assist rate last year, 20.4% assist rate the previous year. But yeah, I could definitely see it happening because, as somebody pointed out, he was a 6 foot point guard coming out or whatever. He was a 6'5" point guard out of Episcopal High School, and 3 years later, so was Justin Bagg. So, you know, he's played point guard in the past. He could probably do it now.
Yeah, it'll be a very interesting thing here. Obviously, the bigger question with Long is that he is coming off a year with no basketball. Tore his ACL, I believe, in the summer. I think it was the late spring. I don't know if I want to say it was the summer, but it was the late spring last year where he tore his ACL, did not play a single minute last year. I don't know, maybe we should be talking about this, but there were some underlying rumors that he may have been on his way to Mason for last year if he was not injured, but he was. He spent his medical year at Maryland, but he's here now. But I think that maybe is the biggest question from Long. If they're trusting him this early, though, it seems like he's at full health, which that would be a huge deal because you never know coming off an ACL injury what a player is going to be like. It seems to be, though, that Long, at the very least, has right now, if we're going off the preseason game, has the trust of the coaches right now.
I mean, he kind of has to have the trust of the coaches because he's been with Tony Skinn at 2 stops, and if Tony Skinn didn't trust him, he would not be with him at a 3rd stop.
That's true. That's a good point.
So I think he's kind of gonna be the coach's player there. And I think he tore his ACL or had the major knee injury during the Big Ten tournament. So he's had a good what 18 months to heal from that.
18 months to recover.
So you're thinking about it. Generally, that's when players are back, not just back to playing, but back at their physical peak.
That's true.
I think
that's a very good point. It was a full summer for Jahari. That is something that's very important. This was a full offseason for Jahari, and I should have mentioned that. You're right. This was a full offseason, and that is so critical for any player coming back because so many of these guys, when they come back from injury, they don't get a full offseason. So many of them. But he's gotten that full offseason. That might be the difference maker. Now, you mentioned him already, Palmer. We mentioned him already. But let's go talk about the transfer from Presbyterian, the junior from Georgia, sweet Georgia. Let's talk about Kory Mincy, Palmer. This is another guy that a lot of people have been talking about and how critical he could be, not just to this season, but potentially to Mason's future. It's been really throughout the first 2 years of Tony Skinn, there has not been a guy who has played the point guard even at any level of basketball, quite like Kory Mincy did last year for Presbyterian. There's a lot of excitement surrounding this guy. It sounds like it's been a tough preseason for him, but there's good reason why people are excited about this player, Palmer.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good. I mean, he was a really good scorer and just overall offensive machine last year. I mean, 25.4 assist rate, 15.5 turnover rate, 20 over 20, sub 15 is generally like the baseline for it. This guy's a really good playmaker. I mean, it was at a lower level, but I mean, his efficiency, I mean, you'd like more than 40% from 2, but 35% from 3, you will absolutely take that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with a better environment, because Presbyterian was not good. Let's hope it was the environment and not him. But Presbyterian offense was really bad, and I think that with you would hope this is more of an open offense that would, keep the paint more open for him.
Certainly, that is what Tony Skinn's goal is. We've seen that throughout the last 2 years. Tony Skinn's goal is to close the paint on defense and make it wide open on offense. So certainly that should help Kory Mincy. He, like you said, And when you talk about playing in slower competition, but he obviously, when you play for a team like Presbyterian, you will have games against higher competition. And he had games against Miami, Florida, and NC State last year that people were 25 plus point games. Those are things that you can't knock. Maybe he's not starting right now. Maybe he still is struggling. Maybe he's not reaching that consistency in practice that maybe Coach Tony Skinn and co. want to see from him. But this is a guy who could clearly bring a lot to the table, I think. And I think you mentioned the assist rate. I think even in the preseason game, I think very clearly had good assist numbers. He's a guy who could pass the ball out. And I'm really, really intrigued to see how that develops. But he is a good passer of the ball. And that is something that I think even when we had Baraka Okoje and Ronald Polite year one with Tony Skinn, I feel like Mincy is at just another level above there in terms of being able to pass the ball. That's what really intrigues me with him. I think he's a playmaker. I think Tony Skinn wants him to be a playmaker from that point guard spot. You're feeding some of the other guys we have. It'll be really interesting to see how he develops though this season. He could be the piece that kind of makes or breaks, from kind of that melty 5 through 8 middle into the top 4 for George Mason. How Kory Mincy plays. He might be that type of player here. But let's move on to another guard. And this is a guy who's going to be a lot of question marks over right now because we saw him in a big knee brace during the preseason game. Let's talk about the guy who's got the best name on the team, Palmer. Let's talk about Jahari Fatt Hill.
Yeah, I mean, if you want highlights, that's the guy. We've all seen that one high flying dunk against Dayton, where he just destroys some poor, I think like Isaac Jack, some poor guy.
I think it was either Isaac Jack or Jacob Connor. It was one of the two non. It wasn't Latong.
It was definitely not Latong.
It was not Latong. I don't think he would have been able to do that over Latong.
Yeah, but this is the high ceiling. This is the swing for the fences of the pure microwave scorer who can just get to his spots at will. And I mean, when he's going to the rim, he's doing everything at will.
He should do that.
He should do that. Now, of course, there's a reason. Teams figured that out. Like, all he can do is go to the rim. Let's maybe stop that. But if you have talent around you where, oh no, we have to leave this guy 1-on-1, get to the rim, that could just be a matchup problem forever.
Yeah, absolutely. So but you kind of hint to what the reason why he's at George Mason, because if he shot like he shot from layups, if he could translate that everywhere else, not only would he have not been at Ball State last year, but he would not be at George Mason this year. Let's make that clear, because his issue is the fact that not only is his mid-range jump shot horribly inefficient, but his three-pointing shooting is also pretty inefficient. I believe it was 28% from three last year for Ball State. It was around that number. I believe it was a sub 30 number. I remember that for sure.
It was for sure sub 30.
Yeah, it was for sure sub 30. So that's obviously the reason why he's here and why I think Palmer's words about he's the swing, because if you could turn a player like Fatt Hill efficient, then holy cow, you've got Fatt Hill who can shoot efficiently. That is a crazy player at the A10 level. Now, I'm not so sure that one summer is going to do that. However, and again, like I said, big knee brace. I've heard varying levels of seriousness. It started out where it seeming like bad news. Now I've kind of heard it trickle down to not as concerning as once feared, which would be good for the Patriots. But, it'll be very interesting to see because, like you said, Palmer, he is that swing for the fences player. He is the guy who I have heard good things about on the defensive end, which is not something necessarily expected, but that's very good news if he is showing that intensity and that athletic ability he has on the defensive end. That's really good news for George Mason if he can translate that into real games. If Tony Skinn is encouraging him to please, for the love of all that is holy, just take layups in real game situations, then again, that would be good things. And we know Tony Skinn is not going to tolerate nonsense from his players unless they're scoring 30 points a game, if we're being honest. But this is going to be he is the swing for the fences pick. We talk about Kory Mincy maybe being part of that X Factor group. Certainly Fatt Hill is part of that too. If he turns out good, that might transform Mason again from that kind of marshmallowy coagulation that might be the 5 through 8 range in the A10 this year to pushing the Loyola, the VCU, the Dayton, and the GW and the SLUs of the world, and pushing for those top 4 spots. Mason seems to be it seems to be the very only consensus pick of the A10 where I feel like everyone is picking George Mason to finish 6th, Palmer. I feel like it's every place I see, it feels like we're being picked 6th.
It kind of makes sense. I personally have them. I think I have them 4th, which is I feel like reasonably high. Yeah, I think it's just they're just teams ahead where it's just like they'll probably be good. They'll probably be good. And I mean, Mason was picked I think 5th or 6th last year. I mean, don't they have like St. Joseph 5, which is just kind of like what's going on there? Because I don't think. I mean, is that them saying that? Is that I don't really know what that's saying. Like, are they saying that Donahue is a step up from Billy Lang? I just don't know what that means.
I don't think I've made my point before. I do not think Steve Donahue is a step up from Billy Lang, but apparently that gets you yelled at in this day and age. However, moving on, we're going to finish up the guards section here. Let's talk about the 2 freshman guards. Of course, on one side, you have a legacy player. Isaiah Skinn, the son of Tony Skinn, is on the roster this year. He has committed and he's on the roster, as well as freshman guard Devin Booker. Booker, we've talked about this 2025 freshman class. Devin Booker was kind of the guy who you said, he's not Emmanuel Kanga, who we'll get to here shortly, but he's an interesting player. He's played very well in the scrimmage and in the preseason game. We'll get, Isaiah Skinn, we'll get a little part on him, but Devin Booker, is he the freshman X Factor? I keep using the word X Factor. We can't have all these X Factors. But is he maybe a surprise minute getter from the back half of the bench there?
I think it's definitely more possible that. Oh, I think it's possible that both freshmen get or both Kanga and Booker get minutes, but I feel like Kanga's fighting for like 4 spots. Like 4 available roster spots, or I guess lineup spots, and Booker is in line for like 6. He can kind of. I feel like Booker has a wider range, and if we don't know the extent of Jahari Hill's injury, but if that takes out one, then that makes it that much easier for him to get minutes.
And certainly that is certainly true. If Fatt Hill is injured for a significant period of time, or even just a little bit of time, if we're talking him missing, let's say the first 6 games, let's say the first 7 games of the season, he's out through Thanksgiving. Those are minutes where Devin Booker will take. Those are the times when he'll play. It'll be very interesting to see what he does now. Isaiah Skinn, son of Tony Skinn, obviously, he seems to be the guy who's got relegated kind of within the walk-on areas. He's not going to be a guy who's going to see a whole lot of minutes outside of the any potential butt whoopings of, let's say, New Hampshire, Loyola, Maryland, and we'll see how Fran McCaffrey's Penn are doing this year. Catawba, is that what it is? Is that Catawba? All right, there we go.
That's how I say it.
Catawba. Okay, Catawba. Okay, well, we're going with that. We're going with Catawba. All right. But other than that, I don't think Isaiah's going to see many minutes. If he turns out to be like his dad, then happy days for us all. But right now, it's a nice story. It's great to see. And anything that makes Tony happy, we will let him do it. Right, Palmer? We will let him do it. Anything that makes you happy, sir, we'll let you have. But moving on, let's start to the forwards now. We're getting into the forward range, Palmer. Let's move on to the forwards. We'll start with another transfer here. The guy from Mount St. Mary's, originally from Fort Myers, Florida, but he spent 4 years with the Mount. The man who will be taking Woody Newton's spot at the 4, almost certainly. Let's talk about Dola Adebayo, one of the few players on this team who's got tournament experience, Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, he played in the tournament for, out of the MAC, which is, the MAC, double A,
Double A Mac.
which is double A MAC, which is a quality conference, one of the better Northeastern conferences. Uh, I mean, he's a great defender, and I think my comparison for him has always been the idea of Malik Henry, where it's like, this guy's really athletic. Oh, wow, he can, do all this. I think some people have had him as like defensive player of the year in the conference, which in a conference with Miles Rubin is pretty high praise.
That's a high expectations there.
Yeah, I like Dola Adebayo. I wouldn't put him ahead of Rubin just because Rubin has name recognition. That's kind of the default.
And he'll have statistical backing because he'll have like 3 blocks a game.
Yes, and don't look at his foul numbers, but he'll have some blocks.
Yeah.
I think all defense team is a realistic outcome for him.
Oh yes, absolutely. Now absolutely for Dola there. He also, and we talk about his defensive game. He will be, if he is starting at the 4, Palmer, he will be an offensive upgrade. I don't know if he'll be as good at defense as Woody Newton was. Woody Newton was exemplary at defense from the 4 with his athleticism and with those long arms of his. But Dola Adebayo, I think, as an offensive option, feels like he'll be an upgrade just because I think he does better on the interior. He doesn't have as heavy of a game. He can get to the interior. And at Mount St. Mary's, for most of his recent seasons there, he shot the ball better than from 3 than Woody Newton did. Woody could certainly be inconsistent. He had a little bit of a weird shot. Palmer and you and I have talked about that a little bit, the weird spin on the ball, but certainly he made it work for him, what he did. But I think he'll be an upgrade offensively. I don't know if he'll be as good defensively. I'm not saying he won't be good defensively. I think he certainly will be. He'll be tasked with, I think, guarding the vast majority of teams' best 3/4 players. I think we'll certainly see some switch on in that, depending on what the size look is. He might even be put on guys like Robbie Avila, I think, potentially this year. We'll see how that goes. But let's go now into the freshman. No, we're going to start with the second returner. Let's talk about Stas Sivka, because a lot of people are talking about Stas Sivka, Palmer, and I don't think it's in the way that we expected people to be talking about Stas Sivka.
Yeah, at the beginning of the offseason, Stas was just kind of honestly, he was kind of like thought of as a freshman to me personally, where it was just kind of like, you're not really penciling him in for any minutes. And then Mason brings in all these bigs, and it's like, well, now he's definitely not getting any playing time.
Yeah.
And we're hearing a little bit of rumblings over the summer. And then John Rothstein heads over to Fairfax and puts out a tweet like, yes, Stas Sivka's in my starting 5. And we're like, what's going on there, man?
That's very confusing, John. We don't care for that.
Yes.
That goes against our predetermined narrative, sir.
So we're trying to figure out, is that Dola Adebayo disappointing, or is that Stas Sivka having an all-time breakout? Yeah. Because if you watch the I think it was the Field of 68 at Media Day for A10, Brayden O'Connor said Sivka had a huge breakout. And I'm sorry, everybody has a huge breakout. But if, unbiased source John Rothstein comes in and is talking about this random guy that he's never heard of having this breakout, something's going on.
Yeah, certainly. And I think one of the big parts here, I talked to some people. Stas did not go back to Slovenia, apparently, in the offseason. Apparently, he stayed here at Fairfax and was just in the gym. Sometimes, Palmer, that's all it takes. As crazy as it sounds, sometimes that level of work is all it takes for these players to explode. Now, if you go by the minutes in the Alford game, certainly that doesn't seem, what John Rothstein suggested certainly doesn't seem to be coming to fruition. I think Stas is certainly going to get more minutes than we originally expected from him. We always kind of did have this talk throughout the offseason. Do we really have a backup person at the 4 spot? I think that was always the question. We didn't really bring anyone in the transfer portal. Malik Presley, who we're going to get to here shortly, he's not really a true 4 because of his size. Emmanuel Kanga maybe had some chatter that he could be a 4, but again, his offensive skill set very much translates him to a 5 more often. Sivka is a 3-point shooter, I think, first. He's an outside guy first. And if he has improved his foot speed, we're talking about a guy who's 6'10", potentially playing the 4 at the A10 level. That sounds like fun to me, Palmer. I don't know about you, but that sounds like fun at least.
I mean, that's the tallest guy to play the floor since Blake Jones. But which
We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that point. No.
but I think Sivka. When I saw Sivka I watched all 6 of his games that I could find when he was in Slovenia, and I mean he was a really good defender. So I mean, if you can be a 3 and D4, I mean
At
that's
6'10".
at 6'10", that's just something. He's bringing
useful.
something because
It's
some
useful.
guys, some stretch fours end up not being able to shoot. Then it's like, what are you doing out here? And he, at the very least, can play. I saw really good perimeter defense and post defense. So at the very least, he's bringing something.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's go on to the next true wing forward. Let's talk about the interesting one. I think another really interesting one. The kid technically transferring from Texas, but he redshirted all of last year. After his freshman year at Vanderbilt. Let's talk about Malik Presley, the redshirt sophomore. Kind of interesting pickup here, and certainly seems to be the use of new assistant coach Andy Fox. Certainly seemed to probably have some influence there, as he was an assistant at Vanderbilt when Presley was a freshman there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that there is a reason he's at George Mason, because he's pretty good, except for one thing. He is a really bad shooter, and the peripherals do not make it look like he's going to be a better shooter. I do the draft. I study the draft every year, and for shooting improvement, I look at free throw percentage and I look at pass 3-point percentage. If they shot well in high school, and then I look at free throw percentage and 3-point volume, and he had none of it. So, me personally, I say I give up on the shooting. More, I'm just not counting on it happening. He could reasonably come out and shoot 30%, and we're totally fine with that. But the defense is where, he was brought in for a reason. He was a really good defender at Vanderbilt, just kind of a connective piece. And I'm going to make up a narrative. He played on a team with Trey Johnson. He's probably guarding Trey Johnson in practice. Just gonna act like he was locking up Trey Johnson in practice.
There you go. Attaboy, Palmer. Attaboy.
I liken him to Saquon Singleton, because that's honestly that's what Saquon Singleton was. It was, well, he's not forward size, but he can't shoot, so he kind of has to be a forward. I don't think Saquon Singleton made a single 3 all year. I think Presley will make more than that. But yeah, I mean, I would enjoy it. Seems like a guy that on a game, in some games he'll be really useful, and in some games it's like, don't put him in.
I will like a younger Saquon Singleton much more as the 9th player off the bench than the 6th player off the bench. The first player off the bench as the 6th man that Saquon Singleton was his senior year. I mean that no offense to Saquon. He was a good player for what his role was, but the fact that he was the first guy off the bench for many games kind of highlighted the issues that 22-23 team had. Thank you very much, Providence. But we'll move on from that for now. Let's head now. I think at this point we're getting one more true forward, Palmer. It's the other freshman, the last of the 4 freshmen. Let's talk about the next international, the kid from France, from Nanterre, France, Ryan-Preston Mendy, 6'9" wing forward. Let's talk about him a little bit, Palmer.
This is truly just a lottery ticket, which if you have 15 roster spots, get those lottery tickets.
Yep.
I mean, realistically, if he's bad, you keep him for another year. And I like him. I think he redshirts, just because there's so many people in front of him at the 4 that I just don't see a world where he plays, unless he's took an absurd jump. But that's pretty hard to do. When he's not just a freshman, he was a late freshman. I think he came in July or August. So I mean, that's getting less time. If you watch just his highlights, you could convince me that he was a NBA prospect, like a lower end NBA prospect, because he is a really good athlete and he loves to dunk, which is just fun. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting piece that you can get really excited about, just because he's probably going to return. And in this day and age, returners are really fun.
Which is very similar to Stas in that regard, right? Just very similar in that way, where he's probably not going to play a whole lot this season, but he's also probably going to stay around, and he's going to continue to be developed by this coaching staff. And that means he's going to get some Steve Curran coaching. And if Stas Sivka is good, then Steve Curran is maybe the best big man assistant coach in the history of the Atlantic 10. I think, arguably. That's not a knock against Stas. That's a compliment to Steve and his ability to develop and coach forwards and centers. But let's move on into the centers, and we're going to start with the freshman here. Palmer, let's start with the freshman. The big name freshman, the man from Mount Zion Prep, originally from Gabon, home of such players from FIFA such as Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. If you people know who that is, credit to you. But let's talk about Emmanuel Kanga, man, because if we're talking about freshmen who are going to get minutes, it looks like Kanga is going to be the one who's going to get the most.
Yeah, I mean, he might be the only Gabonese student, which is that's
really
cool. Well, when I at some point I was bored, I did some research, and you could find the I found the what is it, like the Flag Day thing?
Yeah.
And there was a Gabonese student where I looked at it, how it lined up, and he would have graduated this year. So there's a chance that there's a chance that there are no Gabonese students here except him, which is cool.
Oh, that is cool. That's great stat, Palmer. That's why we love you.
And so I mean, we've beat this drum, but we're gonna beat it some more.
Yes, let's beat it.
So freshman big men have a hard time getting on the court, generally because of pick and roll defense and their hands.
Yes.
And Kanga was a really good pick and roll defender when he was at Mount Zion. He also had really good hands at Mount Zion. So it's kind of like, well, if he's really good at these things that keep him off the floor, maybe he might get on the floor a lot.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, he's a guy who plays a bully ball style of basketball. I think already at a younger age. Like you said, the pick and roll defense is kind of there already. There was a high level pick and roll defender in high school, which is very impressive for a big man to do. I do think that's because he's much more of a typical big man. He did not shoot a lot of threes in high school. I don't think he's going to be expected to shoot a lot of threes right now at Mason, but I think he works a lot in this system. It's a pick and roll system, both on offense to defend the pick and roll well, on the defensive system for the Patriot pressure, because Tony Skinn wants you to stay in every offensive player's face when you're on the court on defense. He just seems to work. And I think that's hard to say with freshmen when you're like, I think with a lot of freshmen you see, oh, he can fit here, he can fit there. Kanga does fit exactly what Tony Skinn is looking for. It's exactly what he's looking for from the 5 spot. Someone who could get down and get easy 2-point buckets. He's not looking for a guy who wants to take mid-range. He's not looking for a guy who sticks around the perimeter all the time at the 5. Certainly he doesn't mind at the 5. He likes that in doses. But I think he probably does prefer these back-him-down guys, the guys potentially like Jalen Haynes, whose main role is to back guys down, beat them in submission, and then do the exact same thing on defense.
Yes, I can see what you're saying. Yes, he seems like more of a transfer portal pickup than a freshman because, as you said, freshmen are normally here's what this guy could be, and it seems like this is what Kang already is, and he could be even more. So honestly, I keep giving out comparisons. Offensively, I could see him being like a similar to Amari Kelly without the 3-point shot. Now, I don't expect him to defend like Amari Kelly because that was kind of Mason's best defender or best big defender, honestly, the entire time Skinn has been here. So I don't expect that, but off the bat. But I mean, just kind of being a good play finisher, hitting some post hooks. Maybe not somehow going 2 for 3 from 3 every game like Amari Kelly did, but
that was wild that season, wasn't it? I don't think Amari had tried any more than 23s in a season, and then he came and shot 26 for 47. He shot 42% from 3 or something like that. His one season here, that was wild. He shot I think he shot 28 for 70 or something like that. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less in terms of actual shots. But it was some wild number.
It was I think his most was I think he shot 10 threes in his last year at UNC Wilmington, and then he went to a 40% 3-point shooter, which is like, is that Mason doing that, or is that UNC Wilmington just saying no, don't shoot?
Yeah, he was 25 for 59 in his senior year here at Mason, and he was 16 for 39 in conference. He shot more three-pointers in conference play than he did, I believe, and he did combined. He shot 25 threes combined his prior 4 seasons of college basketball, and he shot 39 alone in conference play that season. And then he decided to hit 41% of them, which is why he's got a contract in Europe again. So
good for him.
Learn to shoot the three, kid. If you're learning to play basketball, learn to shoot a three-pointer. It will help you. But let's go. We're going to end up the segment, Palmer. Let's start with the first of the 2 transfer centers. We're talking about big, thick Nick Ellington, the bruiser from Murray State, 6'8", pure center. What are your thoughts on Ellington?
I think this is just a guy who's going to finish plays and set great screens, and that's kind of all you really want from, or it's kind of all you really need from your center. I think Three Bid League, great podcast, brought up that he had a really high free throw rate at Murray State, and there's a chance that just kind of translates over, and he's just Jalen Haynes. Now that's a one in whatever chance, but man, I like that exists. So I think it's just
certainly the thing for Ellington is that he has been supremely efficient in all 3 of his years of college basketball. He's shot over 55% from 2, over 56% from 2 actually, the last 2 years at Murray State. He has still yet to ever attempt a free throw in college basketball, which no, not a free throw. That would be wild as a center. A 3-pointer, excuse me. But I think also importantly last year, he dramatically improved his free throw shooting. Last year, he shot 62% from the line last year, which was his best in his career. But crucially, I think in conference play, he shot 68% from the line in conference play, which is by far and away the best he's ever done in any set of games. That's very important. I want to point that out. If he could translate that and maybe even do a little better, get into that 70-75% range, that's very good news because it's a guy who's going to have a lot of post moves. He's going to draw a lot of fouls. He was number 8 in, I believe that's the Missouri Valley Conference last year, which is not a bad conference. Let's put that. That is not a bad conference. He was number 8 in the entire Missouri Valley last year in terms of fouls drawn a game. This is a guy who's going to get to the line. Now, he's going to need to make those shots at the line in the A10, but he's going to get to the line, and he's going to be that bruiser down there, and kind of more like Gio and Jalen. But behind him, we've got the guy who's different. We've got that additional flavor to the 5 spot this year, Palmer. We knew him a little bit because who dunked on his head? Who was the guy who dunked on his head in the NIT game?
I don't remember, but I remember somebody was. I remember we were like, don't. Once we figured out he was transferring here, it was like, maybe we can't post this anymore. But
yeah, can't use that anymore. But Riley Allenspach, the transfer from Sanford, kind of a lucky transfer. Bucky McMillan, the former head coach of Sanford, kind of got a better job very late in the cycle. Texas A&M, of course, a victim of the Kevin Willard move to Villanova. Buzz Williams from Texas A&M takes now a new role at Maryland. So Texas A&M hires Bucky McMillan, and Sanford's team goes out and away, and Riley Allenspach comes here. Now, the very interesting thing about Allenspach, Palmer, he was actually someone that Kim English did try to recruit. I don't know if he ever came to campus for a visit officially, but he was on the lists as a freshman that Kim English did try to get here. But he ends up here anyway, a 6'11 junior who likes to shoot the 3 ball.
He's such a Kim English player, but Kim English would have run him out as the starting center and like not gotten any backup. But I mean, the shooting over to 54.5% from last year on 22 attempts. Okay, the volume's low enough that this probably isn't real, but 22 for 50, 44% in his career, that's high enough that it's like he's probably a real shooter. He definitely is a real shooter. He probably is a real 40% 3-point shooter, which, I will absolutely take that at the 5.
Right, again, that's Amari Kelly level. That would be Amari Kelly level. That would be
Yes.
good.
Now, the one concerning thing is he reached a career high in minute percentage at 33.4, but Bucky McMillan doesn't play anybody big minutes. He plays everybody small minutes, and they just go super hard in those small minutes.
Yep.
So
that was the scheme of Buckyball. That was the scheme.
Yes. So there's two scenarios. Either Allenspach could, play 25 minutes a game, and that is awesome. Or he's being hidden by this, and we're gonna act like that doesn't exist. So this is a guy that if you look at the analytics are just pretty absurd for him. If you can scale that, with going from 33.4% to 50 to 55, play this guy 20 minutes a game, he's giving you 63% true shooting, great offensive rebounding, some sneaky playmaking.
And that's size. He's 6'11".
Yeah, the size, 6'11". That's awesome. And that's just a high swing. His dad likes all our tweets. So,
yes. We love you, Brian Allenspach. Hooray.
Yes.
Hooray for Brian Allenspach.
Yeah, but I think it's so funny. If you look at his Torvik page, there's a whole lot of green on here. There's a whole lot of green. One thing that's a little interesting is he shot 54.5% from 3 last year, but shot 67% from the free throw line. Don't know how that works.
Yeah.
Some guys, it just happens, but I'd hope he can improve on that free throw percentage because I'll be honest, that's the first time I've ever seen that. Because there was one thing red on here, and it was that. So,
and it's not like his three, it's not like he was just banking in threes or anything from the videos. Like he had an actual good shot. Like the form was good, and he did shoot. I think it was 58% from 2 last year. So it's not like we're getting a guy who's kind of just been. It was like 150 plus attempts or something like that. So he's good in theory with both interior and 3 from behind the line. That would be very good for us all. I think we would all celebrate that with mighty cheers. I'm really excited to see what he does. I'm excited for Riley. I think he's going to have a really good potential to be a very good player at the A10 level. I think he can be very effective at the A10 level. I think he will be crucial when we're going up against teams who are going to have larger big men. I'm not necessarily even talking about Robbie Avila here. I'm talking about Miles Rubin. I'm talking about Rafael Castro, I think, more than any. I think Mesa did struggle with that a little bit last year because Gio Amajiru struggled a little bit against Castro in some aspects last year. Jalen Haynes did not have the size to deal with Castro. So it was Woody Newton and I think genuinely Jared Billups at some point last year against Rafael Castro. And neither of those men are here anymore because they've graduated. So I think Allenspach is going to be very, very critical in those moments. I'm very excited to see what he does. But that's the team. That's the team, Palmer. 3 days away. Are you going to be there? I'm going to be there November 3rd, Palmer. Are you going to be there?
The plan is to be there.
The plan is for Palmer to be there. I'm going to be there. There's going to be so many GK by George guys there. It feels like there's going to be a lot of them there, Paul. A lot of us there, Palmer.
Yeah. And Mason's doing the deal where if you're a federal employee affected by the shutdown, you get 4 free tickets.
Yeah.
Which is Mason has been struggling with attendance since COVID. There's a chance that this just there's a chance, I don't know, I'm not an economics guy. There's a chance that this just breaks the attendance record since COVID. So I'm really excited for that. I'm not running the ticket app, so I love it when they give away free tickets. Yeah, I like to see the attendance number big. I don't care how much it costs to get in.
Bring your friends, everybody. Bring your friends. There you go. There's the signage. Bring your friends. Bring your family. We're sorry to the federal workers who aren't getting paid right now because the Senate can't agree to a budget, but such is the world we live in. Come out and have 3 hours of fun and see George Mason hopefully knock the crap out of Wofford on Monday night because that's when the season starts, Palmer. And we've got 2 games this upcoming week. We've got Monday night against Wofford, Friday night against Winthrop. We'll have a podcast then for you after the result of both of those games. We'll also be bringing back the post-game spaces this year. So maybe not on Monday night because I'm probably going to be driving home to central Pennsylvania at 11 o'clock at night, and that's not necessarily safe to run a Twitter spaces at that time of night. But we'll have one after the Winthrop game for sure. I'm Joe Szymanski. He's Palmer Johnson. This has been our preview of the George Mason 2025-26 season. Palmer, we're finally here. You're going to want to stick with us all season right here on Giant Killer Onward to Victory. We're your place for George Mason basketball. Let's rock and roll, Patriots. It's Patriot pressure season, baby. We'll see you guys on Monday night at Eagle Bank Arena to see the Patriots face off against Wofford. Have a great day, night, evening, whenever you're listening, folks. This has been Onward to Victory.